Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my top 5 books that I read over the summer. If this is the first time you're seeing one of my seasonal wrap-ups, what I like to do in these videos is I rank all the books that I picked up or read in the last season, so over the summer, June, July, and August. I'm going to rank those books against each other, and I'm going to tell you them from the book I enjoyed the least all the way up to my favorite book that I read over the summer. And for the top 5 books, I'm going to go into more depth about why I enjoyed them so much. I will link my monthly wrap-ups down in the description box, so if you want to hear more information about some of the books that I don't go in depth into in this video, you can check out more thoughts on those books in those monthly wrap-ups. So over the summer, I read/picked up 9 books. I say /picked up because one of them was a book I chose to DNF, which means that I didn't finish it because I wasn't enjoying it. 9 is a little bit on the low side for me for a season. I tend to average closer to like 12 to 15 books in a 3-month time span, but I went through 2 different reading slumps over the summer, and so honestly, I'm fairly happy with that number. I am quite behind on my Goodreads goal at this point, which is disappointing, but I'm hoping to read a number of novellas before the end of the year, and maybe that will help me to catch up, which I don't consider to be cheating. Okay, so out of the 9 books that I picked up over the summer, this is how my ratings panned out. I had 1 book that I gave 2 stars, and this was the one that I DNF'd. I had 1 book that I gave 3 stars. I had 5 books that I gave 4 stars. And I had 2 books that I gave 5 stars. One of those 5-star reads was actually a reread, and I don't allow my rereads to take one of my top 5 spots. And so I will go ahead and tell you about my reread now. The book that was a reread for me was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And this one was a little bit tricky just because it was a reread, but I first read it like 10 years ago. So I wanted to count it in my top 5 because honestly, this was my favorite book that I read out of all of the rest of these. But I'm sticking to my rules because I like rules. So I'm not giving this my number 1 spot, but it is definitely an honorable mention because I absolutely loved it, and I am so excited to be reading more Brandon Sanderson because I really enjoy Brandon Sanderson. This world is so cool in the series. Sanderson is a master world builder, and I love the world in this book, and I really like the characters, and I really like this series. So I'm gonna try not to ramble about it anymore, but that was my reread of the summer, and I gave it 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I already said that. Okay, moving on, starting at the bottom of my list, I have Forest of Souls by Lori M. Lee, which I gave 2 stars. And like I said, this is the one that I DNF'd. I think I read about 20% of it. Next, I have A Memory Called Empire by Arcady Martine, which I gave 3 stars. Then moving on to my 4 stars, so I had 5 4-star books, and 4 of them are in my top 5. So the only 4-star book I had that didn't make it to my top 5 was How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin, which is a short story collection of hers. All right, now we're on to my top 5 books. At the bottom of my top 5 is The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson, which is the first book in a series by the same name. This is a YA fantasy about a girl named Elisa, and she's a princess who is betrothed to a prince in another kingdom, and she's actually really excited about the marriage because she, wants to do everything that she can to help protect her country and her people, and she thinks this marriage will help with that because it's like a good alliance. This is also a chosen one story because Elisa was born with a godstone in her belly button, in her navel. And no one really knows what this means. There are people who have been born in the past with godstones, and the godstone just signifies that they are important and are going to do something important before they die, but nobody knows what they're meant to do until it actually happens. I really enjoyed the politics in this book. There is a bit of political intrigue, and that was something that appealed to me. And I also really love the main character, Elisa. I don't remember how the audiobook said it, but she's one of those characters who is just really sharp, really smart, and strategic, and I'm a sucker for characters like that. And I just also love how passionate she was about trying to protect her people and doing what's best for her country. I thought the world building was pretty cool. The setting is a little bit different. Part of the book is set in like a deserty setting with like camels and stuff. One thing that I didn't love about the book was kind of the religion aspect. I just found it really reminiscent in some ways of like Catholicism and Christianity. And for me, in fantasy books, I've found that I prefer to have religions that are very, very different. I mean, they didn't have Jesus or anything, but I just was being reminded of Catholicism, and I thought the book had some like Spanish callbacks. I just felt like some of the names sounded kind of Spanish, if I'm remembering correctly. And those kinds of things just pull me out of the story a little bit because it's supposed to be a fantasy and a totally different world, but there are so many elements that were reminding me of our world, which, I mean, it's impossible to have something like completely different, I feel like, but it has to be different enough that I'm not constantly feeling like I'm being reminded of things in our world. But overall, I did really enjoy the story. I do plan to continue on in the series because I really like the main character, Elisa, and I want to see what is going to happen to her next. My fourth favorite book from the summer was The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is an adult horror fantasy. In the past, I have called this YA, but now I'm taking that back because my friend Bethany said that she didn't think that it was YA, and when I looked into it further, I always forget that you can look at the pricing of books to help you know how the publisher is trying to market it, and this one was priced more in the adult book range. So I'm going with adult horror now. But this one is set in a world that is not our own, and the main character in this book lives in a very religious and puritanical and also polygamist society. Her mother had done some things that were considered very serious crimes by her society and was burned at the stake because of it. And the main character has kind of grown up with the weight of her mother's crimes on her shoulders. And the story is kind of about her finding her own way and also like challenging the beliefs of her society. This one definitely was fulfilling my horror needs because there are some really gruesome things that are described, and it had such a fall aesthetic that I definitely recommend this one for the spooky season. The aesthetic of the cover really fits the tone of the book so well, with it being like black and white and just kind of creepy looking. This book has been pitched as like Salem Witch Trials meets Handmaid's Tale, and I think that's a pretty good pitch for it because there is a lot of like oppression of women in this society, in this world, but also there's a bit of this like witch hunt element too. So overall, I really enjoyed the tone of the story and the plot of the story. For some reason, I never got fully invested or emotionally attached to the characters, and so it wasn't a 5-star read for me, but there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about it. And this was a debut, but I didn't really think it read like a debut. I thought it was really well written, and I am definitely excited to see what Alexis Henderson will come out with next, especially because it sounds like she's really into writing like creepy things. All right, the next 4-star read on my list, coming in third out of my top 5, is The Last Time I Lied by Jo Abercrombie, which is the third and final book in the First Law trilogy. This one was pretty good. At this point in the series, the last book in the series, I have grown attached to most of the characters, and I enjoyed seeing how the end of the story played out. I still think that this book and this series as a whole kind of lacks a little bit of plot. It is very character driven, but it was also almost like there were multiple stories going at the same time, which is fine, but they didn't totally like cross over as much as I would have wanted, and I found that a little frustrating. This one is obviously a little bit hard to talk about because it's the last book in a trilogy, but the things that I can say are that I enjoy these characters. My favorite is Logan Ninefingers, followed closely by Glokta, and I kind of couldn't care less about the rest of the characters, honestly. I do think I will try and read more Jo Abercrombie in the future, even though I didn't like totally love this trilogy. I found his character work really interesting, and I'm hoping that some of his future books have a stronger plot. But enjoyment-wise, this was definitely a solid 4-star for me. And then my best 4-star out of the 4 stars that I had over the summer was allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a mystery thriller slash contemporary. I think it's probably considered to be a contemporary, but it definitely has like mystery thriller vibes in my opinion. This one is about, man, I don't remember the main character's name, but it's about a young girl, oh, Mary, her name's Mary. It's about a 16-year-old girl named Mary who, when she was a young child, like she was 4, her and her mother were babysitting a white baby, and that baby died in their care. And Mary and her mother are black. And somehow, at that time, Mary, the 4-year-old child, is blamed for the death of this baby. And she had to go to prison, like kiddie prison, and then ended up in kind of like a halfway house. And when she's 16, she is a ward of the state. And she finds out that she's pregnant. So the whole book is about her trying to get into a situation where she'll be able to keep her baby, because as a ward of the state and with an alleged history of having killed a child in the past, they're telling her that she's not going to be able to keep this baby, which is, you know, really upsetting for her. And so she goes through the whole book trying to, you know, better herself and be able to keep this baby. There were so many things that I liked about this book. The mystery element was definitely enticing because you don't actually know what happened on the night where baby Alyssa, the white baby, died. And you don't find out until the end of the book. And I just really enjoyed reading from Mary's perspective. I felt really connected with her, not because we have anything in common, definitely not, but because the author wrote her in a way that allowed me to be really empathetic of her situation. And I thought the author did a really good job of kind of outlining some of the social injustices in our society with the prison system and what happens when children become wards of the state and how hard it is to get out of that situation. And I found all of that really fascinating and interesting, and all of that was my favorite part of the book. I would have given this book 5 stars if I didn't dislike the ending. You guys know that I have a thing for endings, and if I don't like an ending, it can kind of ruin a book for me. In this case, it didn't ruin the book for me, but it did drop it down from a 5-star to a 4-star read because I didn't like the way that it ended. Obviously, I can't say why. All I can say is that I feel like it kind of took away from the message of the book that I was getting prior to that point, and I just wasn't a fan of the way that it ended. Okay, moving on to my favorite book, other than The Way of Kings, that I read over the summer. That's going to be The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This was my 3rd Riley Sager, and the 3rd Riley Sager that I have given 5 stars. I am just a sucker for his books, apparently, because I have thoroughly enjoyed all 3 that I have read. So I've read this one, The Last Time I Lied, his most recent release, Home Before Dark, and then also last year I read Lock Every Door, and I gave all of them 5 stars. I just think his thrillers are so fun and keep me guessing until the very end, and this one was no different. And I really love the way this one ended. It might actually be my favorite ending out of the 3 that I've read so far. I still need to read Final Girls. I was thinking to read it this year, but it's looking more like next year. This one is mostly set in a summer camp setting. So the main character in her past, when she was a child, went to the summer camp one summer, and she shared a cabin with 3 other girls, and one night those 3 girls go missing. And so that is the past storyline that we get flashbacks to as we slowly figure out what happened back then. But in the present storyline, Emma has been invited back to be one of the teachers at the summer camp because it's finally reopening after being closed since those girls disappeared whatever years ago. And I know that one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this one was the summer camp setting, because I grew up going to a summer camp for like 5 to 7 years. It was one of my favorite parts of my childhood, and I loved going to summer camp. So I was really looking forward to that element, and it did not disappoint. There were a few things that I was like, that's not really super realistic, but at the same time, it was giving me all the summer camp vibes and so much nostalgia for my time that I spent at summer camp, and I loved that part of it. And then on top of that, throw in a main character who I didn't necessarily love, but I just find that Riley Sager writes really believable and realistic women. I really enjoy his women characters. I know not everybody does, but that's how I feel about them. So throw that in with a mystery that really kept me on my toes. I actually did this as a buddy read with my friend Rachel, and we were, sending messages back and forth, trying to guess what we thought was going to happen. And we never guess what's going to happen in Riley Sager books because, in my mind, he's just that good. But it was just so much fun to buddy read because we were constantly guessing at what was going on, and we both really liked the way that this one ended. So this one was definitely my favorite book, other than The Way of Kings, that I read over the summer. Alright guys, there you have it. Those are my top 5 books that I read over the summer. Let me know in the comment section if you have read any of these and what you thought of them, or let me know what your favorite book that you read over the summer was. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye.